Hey guys, what's up? It's Self-Dev. Welcome back to my channel. So in this video, I wanted to talk about the issue that I have with the idea of sanctioning Russia. Now, for the most part, I agree with what they are doing and the way they are being strategic, the Western countries and pretty much all the countries that are sanctioning Russia to attempt to try to end the war. Um, but there are certain social issues that I have noticed when taking this approach. So, um, as I said, I don't really know another healthy strategic solution that isn't sanctioning Russia, but I do think that there are certain nuances when it comes to the attitude towards Russia and Russian people. And I know that it's it's a problem when there are what's the word? Collateral damage when it comes to trying to stop Russia in terms of Putin and the powers and the military that is directly involved in the conflict in the war. But unfortunately, the the Russian people, and a lot of them are actually innocent in my view, and unfortunately, you can't really um, separate them in terms of how the sanctions work with sanctioning purely the military or the leaders like Putin. You can't make that separation because Russia and all countries in general are societies, are hierarchies, and you can't really target like for example, you can't target just the military part of Russia economically. You kind of have to work with what you can, and that is things like stopping trades with the rest of the world, or no longer purchasing things like oil and gas from Russia. And unfortunately, this will directly impact the people of Russia. Um, Now, I'm not saying that every Russian is against their own country. Um, and let's not forget that um, Russian people are heavily brainwashed by the Russian news that is biased and is missing what the real truth is about the war in Ukraine. And most of them probably have no idea that it's even a war because Putin just refers to it as a military operation. And of course, he has to lie to his people so that the people don't turn against him and it will be like mutiny. It will just make Russia fall apart. So Putin's just trying to be smart and just lie to his people so that people don't turn against him, and he's trying to brainwash the rest of the world. He's trying to brainwash his Russian people so that he at least has a certain population on his side so that he maximizes his chances of winning the war. So more to my main point is when we're sanctioning Russia, we first of all we kind of have to accept that there's collateral damage between sanctioning Russia and having to sanction innocent people as well, and making them struggle with the cost of living and the cost of food and trading and interest rates and all of that. And there's also, I think we have to remember why we are sanctioning them in the first place. So I think what people miss is they might think that they might have this generalization of all Russians now that are in support of the military action of Russia. And that assumption is just crazy because you don't know that every single individual in Russia or who is Russian is supporting their country. Uh, that's just a huge stereotype that it just isn't true. Like you can't just say someone from Australia is automatically proud of Australia and supports Australia just because they're Australian. They might have other reasons. They might stay in Australia because of financial reasons or for friends and family or whatever it might be. So you are not automatically identified and in agreement with your country or your society or your business or even your family. Like, what happens often in social situations, even, is if there's like a disagreement between like a friend of someone who's now an ex-friend, they might also link that person with their like their child or their brother or their sister and fall out with them as well, even when they're a separate person, and they're just assuming that they agree or support them just because they're like related. Like it makes no sense to me. And yeah, that's just how people seem to work, and I'm not really sure why, but that's very often the case where we kind of assume that genetic link or societal cultural link is just like linked, if that makes sense. So what was I saying? So if you're Russian, you don't automatically support what Russians are doing in politics, in military situations, so what they're doing in Russia. And even if they are supporting it, they likely don't even know what's going on in Ukraine. And if they did, they probably wouldn't support it. And this is, I guess, similar to the points I was making in my recent video about should we support majority votes. And there are polls about the no-fly zone that suggest that most people vote for the no-fly zone, but there are polls that ask people if they should support it or not once they find out what it really is and how it works. And then it was reversed, and we had people against the no-fly zone once they found out how it worked and the potential implications of having a no-fly zone. So it's all about what you know and don't know and what your life experience is. If you only know the good things about something, then you will probably support that. But if you only know the bad things about something, you will probably not support it. So you kind of need to be self-aware of how much you know about something, and also be aware about other people as well. Like, are they kept in a dark corner, so to speak, of how much information and truth and knowledge they have access to? And that will probably help you judge that person or that group or country less. Um, so um, so yeah, if we need to sanction Russia to limit, to basically make it more harder for them to afford to pay for the military um, action that's happening in Ukraine. Like that is basically the whole idea, I think. So we also need to make sure that the sanctions themselves only, or at the very least, they will affect that goal. They will slow down the, I guess, affordability of military equipment, military action, training their soldiers and all that. If you're sanctioning something to do with Russia that won't affect that, then there's not really any point doing that. And you're just hurting maybe a Russian individual who isn't really connected with the military action of Russia. And there's no point doing that. Like, you can't just think that it's okay to affect someone or something Russian that won't affect in a more larger concept the way they are approaching the war. Like, I'm seeing a kind of xenophobia here, or potential xenophobia between the rest of the world and Russia. And we shouldn't be like that. We should be attend we should be practically suffocating their economy so that they realize that they can no longer afford to supply weapons and military equipment, and that they focus more on their own survival. And unfortunately, this isn't really working too well. They seem to still be able to have their priorities mixed up, and they are still fighting in Ukraine, even though their economy is pretty much going down the drain. And yeah, unfortunately, they're not reacting how we want them to react when we're sanctioning them. And there's not really much else we can do other than just keep making the sanctions worse and worse. And yeah, it really sucks that we have to affect the Russian population who are potentially innocent in all this, or just unknowing of what's really going on. And what I'll also say is that while their lifestyle is being suffocated because of our actions, at least they aren't Ukrainians who are literally having their lives taken away, and they basically have no choice in the matter. Whereas, compared to that, when you're a Russian citizen right now who is struggling with the rising costs of living and that, you have a much better chance and a much more peaceful environment. But that's like nothing compared to Ukraine. So it's the less of two evils, really. So that's one way you can look at it. So it is difficult, but in order to be a great leader, you need to know when to make the hard choices and to see what your options are and to choose the best options. And I kind of talked about this a little bit in the video about majority votes. So yeah, to wrap up, if you are judging someone who is somehow supporting Russia, really think, are they supporting Russia's actions in Ukraine? Are they potentially supporting the economy such that you are making it a little easier for them to be able to afford Russian um, military and all the costs to do with that. If you're supporting Russia in the way that you are maybe like even something like hanging out with like Russian friends like in the UK, like where I live, like you can someone else might just look at them in like a filthy way as if like they support Russia's actions when you are just making that assumption. So like I talked earlier, you can still have like Russian friends, but if you find out they supported Russia's actions in Ukraine, then that's a whole other story. But you shouldn't just assume they support their country or their society or whatever it is. And like one thing that made me think of making this video is when I heard something about I think it was this composer who decided not to play a Tchaikovsky song. I think he's Russian, and because he was Russian, the composer decided not to play the song, and that kind of made me a bit concerned because at least I don't see how playing a Russian song that was composed hundreds of years ago would financially support Russia or not. If it does, then feel free to ignore my point. But the way I see it, it just sounds like he's Russian. He's a Russian composer, therefore we shouldn't play it. Like I don't want Russia, like an entire country, to just be stereotyped and judged when clearly, like I keep feeling like I have to keep repeating this point because you are not just your country. You are an individual. You are not just your family or your surname. You can be as connected to them or to the country or as disconnected from them, your country, your society, your business, whatever it might be, as much as you want. And people need to realize this and just not make these assumptions. And it's low-key heartbreaking. So thank you very much for watching. You can like, subscribe, share, and click the bell. It would really help. And to also see me in the next video where I will be making more content. I don't really make this kind of content very often, but sometimes I have opinions and I just like to share them. So thank you very much for watching. Have an awesome day and an amazing life.